Thank you, Gargi. It's an honor for me to be here in India as well. I've been in this profession for over 20 years, and it has become, during that time, this profession has become global. But it is rare for these types of exchanges, and I'm very, very delighted to be here and be able to address the Indian patent information community in particular, and also take advantage of this trip and see more of India. And I promise that Tony and I have not talked previously, even though there's going to be quite a few things that I say that he has also said. It's very interesting listening to him. He has talked about patent analytics and how that has changed over the years. I will be talking more about patent searching and how to be more smart about it, because Tony is right. These tools, machine learning, semantic search, AI tools are here to stay. And so not are we only competing with each other, we're competing with these tools. They're going to be a significant part of the patent information business. And so we have to be smarter, and we have to educate ourselves in different ways to be able to work with tools, but also to be able to compete with the tools. And so what is the objective when you're doing a patent information search? Well, obviously, it's to find the references, right? That is what our clients care about the most. But it's also an objective to do a high-quality, efficient search, because and how do we do that? Well, we all know that we have a bunch of components, and we have to make sure that they're all included, right? It's the keywords, classification, we combine the keywords and classification, we do citations, combination of different classifications, assignees, inventors, and then we have the AI-specific components, semantic and similarity. And while those maybe the past used to be something that you do afterwards just to kind of make sure that your search, manual search was done correctly, these days, these are a very important part of what we do. And should be included in every single search. There's really no excuse any longer not to use these tools, and they probably should be done earlier in our process. So whereas in the past we would maybe finish off a search with semantic, now we should probably start it with semantic. And so then we take all those components, we put them in, and we do the search, we review the references, we write the report, email it to our client, and we're done, right? That is the case? Well, not really, because we might have all the components in there, right? And we don't want to compromise on the quality, right? So we'll have as many references as we can, as we should, to review. We don't want to compromise on the comprehensiveness of our work. Because that would mean reviewing less references. That would mean just cutting corners. We want to make it as efficient as possible. And the way we do that is we look at the time, right? So yes, quality and finding the right references, main objectives. How does time come into this picture? Well, time, the total time for a search, really the most simple way to look at it is the total number of references you're going to review times the time spent, the average time we spend per reference. So does it matter then how we review those references, how we conduct our search, and can we impact this total time? That's the only way we become efficient. There's different approaches. The first one that I'd like to talk about is what I call the dump all approach. We create a search strategy, and before even we start the search, we have sort of the strategy in mind. Sometimes this is something that maybe our clients want, or I've seen search firms do this, where they send away they receive the disclosure, they receive the project, and they create a search strategy that they want the client to kind of sign off on. And I remember the first time this happened to me, I was a little bit in a shock because while I appreciate the opportunity for feedback, right, and in that case I was in-house and I was outsourcing the search. I was an expert in that field. I had worked many years doing the same technology, and I definitely knew more than the searcher. And so it did provide me with that opportunity of maybe suggesting a few subclasses, suggesting more keywords. However, I feel like the searcher probably would have been able to figure all those things out had they done the search, first and learned from the insights. Anyway, so in this type of search, you take all the references, you put them in a project folder, and then you just start reviewing them. And so I would argue that here, the time that you need per reference is basically the same throughout the search, right? Maybe in the beginning here, it will take you a little bit time to get familiar with the technology more, and then in the end you can speed that process up. But really, the time spent for reference is basically the same. More so, the likelihood of finding the good references is the same in the beginning as it is in the middle, as it is in the last 5 minutes of the search, right? The best reference could possibly pop up in the last 5 minutes, which means that the bar we're setting, so if we have a bar and we say that anything that we find that is better than this bar that makes it in the report, anything that's below this bar will get discarded. What happens is that bar can change at any minute here, and it can change in the last 10 minutes. And so we've tagged all these references throughout this whole search. But we're going to have to go back and review them at the end and discard a lot of them. And so we've wasted quite a bit of time. The broad to narrow approach is the one where we start with really broad search strings. And I know there's a lot of people who are big fans of this search. It does give you the opportunity to learn and have insights, right? So you search, you see subclasses, learn about keywords. And so I would argue that the number of references reviewed here, in the beginning you'll have the really broad search string. So you're going to go through a lot of art in the beginning, but you don't know the technology yet. And it's pretty broad, so the bar is going to start pretty low. And then when you're coming towards the middle of your search here, when you're really fine-tuned into your concept, you've narrowed those search strings down to get to the point where that's really what you actually want to find. That's when the bar is going to be raised. And then, because you're learning still from your insights, you're going to have to broaden that up again, right? And so here, you're going to be going through things pretty fast. And so I would say that in the beginning here, you're spending quite a bit of time per reference to review it. And then towards the end, you're going to be much faster. The last type of approach is the narrow to broad approach. So here, you start with very narrow search strings. You're focusing in, you want to find that 102 reference right away, like the first half an hour of the search, if possible. And again, it's the type of search where you can learn from as you're working through it. And I would say that you start with very, very narrow search strings, and you spend a lot of time on those, right? But also your bar is going to be high from the beginning. You're probably going to find some pretty good references with this type of search in the first half an hour to the search. And so your bar is already raised. You're not going to be tagging a lot of crappy references that you're going to have to get back into and really review. In addition, the likelihood of finding good references is very high in the beginning, and it's going to decrease significantly as you're going towards the end. And that's when you're you're looking to the majority of your references. And so you're going to be able to go through super fast in the end. That's when you're going through hundreds, maybe thousands of references at a super fast pace. And it doesn't mean that there's no likelihood. Remember, I said it's a small likelihood you're going to find something here. So the likelihood is still there, and that's very important to keep in mind, because that's what keeps you from still going all the way here, still broadening your search, still keeping to look at it, because it has happened to me many times, and this is my favorite way of search. This is the only way I search. I'm a big believer in this type of approach. But it has also happened so many times that in the last hour or two, I still find a really good reference that will make it in the report. However, because there's such a low likelihood, those type of references really stand out here. And it still allows me to keep a very high review speed because those references are going to pop out. They're going to be pretty evident in the sea of irrelevant art that you end up reviewing towards the end here. So the most important part, I feel like you have to have a deliberate methodology. Don't just start and have no sort of philosophy in mind. Most of us start with some keywords. And as I said, I feel like the semantic part of the search should come really early on. There's really great tools out there. Patseer semantic search is a great one. And not only that, it's part of a system where you can also do your searching. I think there's a lot of good AI tools out there. But once you have to move from one system to another and do your AI searching in one tool and then export those results, import them, you're wasting time, right? And you can't do the back and forth so fast. So having a tool where you can do all of it in the same place, it's an advantage. And then you do another round, right? You might come back and you might want to broaden the first and the second keyword round. You add some classification searching to that. And at this point, you probably have some citation, some good references that you can do citation work on. You do another round, right? It's sort of an iterative process where you add more keywords that you found maybe in your classification. You broaden the classification that you found in the keyword search. You might want to add assignees and inventors with or without keyword limitations. And then you do another round. It's an iterative process, and that's really, really important to do. Keywords, here you might add two of the often missed types of searching: classification combinations and classification with keywords. And I found in reviewing a lot of the searches that I have outsourced that a lot of people get these types of combinations wrong. A lot of times what people end up doing is they take a classification and then they narrow it down with keywords that are part of the definition of that classification. And you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you do that, because that classification is already curated. So for example, in the Patent Olympiad, I don't know if you've heard of it, I'm one of the co-founders and co-organizers of the Patent Olympiad. It's a patent searching competition. It's a fun event. And in the first competition, we've asked people to craft a search strategy for a bike that had a sailing component to it to make the bike faster. And so it's a great opportunity to use these kinds of combinations. So you could take the classification for bikes and the classification for sails and combine the two. And you get a very small subset of references that likely has both of those components. Or you take the classification for bikes and then you add keywords for sailing. But if you take the classification for bikes and combine it with the word bike or bicycle and sail, you've made a mistake there, because you're throwing away art that was a bike from the beginning. They just didn't use that word. And there was a reason they didn't use that word, and you're just wasting those references. So it's very important to get these types of combinations correctly. So That's a lot of components, right? And it's a lot of iteration. How do we put that in a report? And we still have a report that's legible and understandable. Because our job is not only to make the report understandable to us, right? We have different types of clients, and I feel like as experts, we have to cater to all of those clients. A report has to be legible, whether you're a reviewer, right? Maybe somebody who's your manager, wherever you're doing your searching, who has to review that report. It can be a patent attorney who, they're somewhat familiar with a little bit of searching. They might know the keywords, but they don't know the classification definitions. They're not going to spend time to look at the USPTO website and the EPO CPC definitions. They need to have all that information in the report. But your clients might also be inventors who know nothing about searching. And they should still be able to look at that search strategy and understand what you have done for them. And have the opportunity to give you feedback and ask you to maybe add some more things. So how do we do this? Well, there's certain characteristics that a search strategy in a report should have. And I'm going to go through each one of these. The length. Oh goodness, have I seen different kinds of search reports. I've seen 15 pages of command language with no explanation. What did I do with that report? I sent it right back. I started to try to piece it together, what was actually done here. Where is S1 and S5, and how did they combine it with S15? It was just, my brain was on fire. That is not my job to spend my time wasted on trying to figure out what was actually done there. I've also seen too short where it was a single search string. That's not acceptable either. And then my pet peeve, deliberately wordy. And that's where I feel like the searcher just really wants to kind of fool the client on how much was done here. And that's a red flag for me. And we're going to look at an example of those. You have to be able to clearly see what was actually searched, what was actually reviewed. What does that mean? I don't want to see exploratory search strings. We all do those. We all put in some search strings, whether it's classification, and we realize, oh, there's too many references here. Let me limit that with some keywords. Well, don't include the exploratory stuff. I only want to see what you have actually reviewed. And if you have more search strings that you haven't, maybe they're part of a combination, then somehow highlight the exact ones that you have reviewed. In addition, I would advocate for consolidating search strings. People search different ways. Maybe you are not like me, where you already create the search strings where I put everything in a single search string. And that's fine. If you want to put in first, bike or bicycle and get 50,000 references, and then you put in sale and you get 150,000 references, it's fine. And then you do L1 and L2, whatever. But in the end, the client is going to just get too confused. So really what you should go in there, consolidate those, and have one single search string that includes all of your elements. Include the class definitions. It's an absolute must. Again, people should not have to figure out where the definitions are. Include the total number of references reviewed. Absolutely, each string should have how many hits it had. And I would advocate even as to have the total number of references reviewed. There is a lot of overlap between search strings, obviously, and that's okay. People know that. And having the total number reviewed is something that I think should be part of the report. Absolutely, which databases you have used, sources are important. Are you using free tools? Lots of questions there. Date limitations, how did you limit it, and include the number of hits with that. Now, accuracy. I've seen a lot of doozies with this as well. I've seen places where reports where there was classification that was not existent that was included in there, or classification that was obviously not relevant, like not even in the same technology. And the searcher just really messed up and included those in there. If you truncate, if you have a hierarchical classification and you take one of the classifications that's the main one, and you have subclasses underneath it, it's great. You truncate it and include everything, but then don't also include some of the subparts. Again, it makes the search string longer, and it just makes it look like you've done more than you actually have. And of course, synonyms, languages, proximity operators, all that is super important. Efficiency is not just how we do the search methodology, right? And we've talked about the different approaches. It's also, there's instances where people use overlapping databases. They'll do their commercial database, and then they go into Google Patents and do the same search there. If I'm outsourcing and I see that as that's a waste of my money, right? Do you want to use different tools because some of them have certain elements that the other tool doesn't have? That's great. But then do just that. Make sure that you're eliminating what you've already seen. If you're going to search US patents and do the same keyword search in your paid-for database in Google Patents, you're looking at the same references again. It's a big no-no for me. And another thing that people tend to see as an advantage, oh, we have a team of people who can do this search for you. Sure, if you're in an extreme time bind where you need something within a day, maybe. Otherwise, I feel like there is really insights lost when multiple people work on the same project. There's going to be overlap in reviewing the same references, but then, most importantly, the same people cannot have the same insights, right? That one brain can when the same brain is looking at the entirety of those references. And reproducibility, of course, that's really important to our clients. So I'd like to look at a couple of examples if we have time. And again, it's not meant to criticize. I want to make sure that you all understand that when there is feedback, it's important to take that as a learning opportunity. Now, interestingly, if we do get to both of these examples, even though there might be a perception in the United States about the quality of search coming from India, for example, I want to, and this isn't, it wasn't on purpose. Both of these are American searchers. People make mistakes everywhere. There are great people everywhere, and there are not so great people everywhere as well. So keep that in mind. So this is a state-of-the-art search, and I work a lot with medical devices. So it's an implant that goes in between two vertebrae, and it has these screws that go into the bone, and then there is some kind of a fixation, some kind of locking mechanism for the screw. There's nothing confidential here that you will see. There's tens of thousands of references that deal with this kind of concept. And so I received a search from one of my clients, a search report, and they said, we've outsourced this to somebody, and we don't know, I mean, it looks like a great report, but it just doesn't feel right. Can you please take a look at it? And so I did. And it starts off really good. They use the professional search engine. They say which one it is. They have some liability disclaimers in here, and I think we should all have that, right? And then they have some educational components that some patent applications in the United States are kept secret, so that might be a reason why we can't find them. Another one that we have the 18 months lag, right? So it's all great stuff. And then they start about talking what they did prior to conducting the search. I mean, we all do stuff prior to starting the search. It should not be in the report. And they did some keyword search, and then they ranked the top 10 CPCs, and they have a very nice, colorful graph of it. again, it's all stuff that they did before they started the search. It's very, very interesting. And then they started the search. Remember, it's a state of the art, but they only looked at US patents and patent applications. And then they divided the search. It's a typo in US patents, and I think what they meant to do here is have be US patent applications. Now, why you want to divide that in a commercial database that already has them grouped together is a little bit beyond me, especially because they do the exact same things for both of them. Anyway, so they take the CPCs that they've figured out were relevant, and then they say that gets them to about 7,000 references, and that was too much, so then they limited it with some keywords in the claims. So the keywords are in the claims. And then they get 347 patents, and then they say, okay, but there's some are alive and some are dead. And that's all they say. They don't actually say what they have reviewed here. We don't know if they reviewed the ones that are dead. We don't know if they reviewed, I mean, we can only assume that because they had all these steps, they really did only the ones that are alive, but it's just an assumption on my part. I don't really know. And then they basically do the same thing for the published patent applications. Again, here now they have another category, yellow, but we don't really know what they have looked at. And then they have a keyword search. In the claims only, again, state of the art. And they use different versions of intervertebral, missing synonyms. Synonyms are really, really important. Just because your client's disclosure uses a single word for something, it's great to start with that. Sure, start with that. But then you have to expand it. I mean, really important ones like spinal and somatic, like these are widely used in this technology, as well as cage. Yes, cage is one way to say the implant. I mean, implant. The word implant was not included. Spacer, interbody, prosthesis. It's incredible. And then they end that with fixation and screw. And in this particular case, and in this technology, fixation and screw are actually synonyms. So they're not even looking for the locking mechanism of the screw here. And again, I understand if you don't know that from the beginning, but this is where there was zero insights that were gained from reviewing those references. So I really have a hard time even understanding if they have actually reviewed it, because anybody who would have started reading those, they would have realized the locking mechanism. That's the way you talk about this fixation that the word they're using here. Yeah, so very, very, very little references that were gained by this terrible keyword search that was just ended a few words together. And then they did some forward and backward citation on two references. Okay, we can translate all this fluff into two search strings. And these are the search strings that actually was described in 4 pages of text and graphs and colorful fluff. Now, if we start to break it down here, we'll see that one of the classifications, it's actually bone graft. So it's when implants are made out of bone graft. It's not the case. So that classification should not be in there. The second one here is tools for inserting these implants. We're not talking about the tool used here. We're actually talking about the actual implant. That classification should not have been there. And then they identified the main place where all these intervertebral implants are. Perfect, right? But then they committed the sin I was talking about before, where you use one of the subclasses that's already in the truncation and put it in there. So that's a double, that shouldn't have been there at all. So again, never, ever narrow down a classification with keywords that are inherent in the definition of that classification. The second example, I think we'll have time to go through this, is an accelerated examination search report. How many of you are familiar with accelerated examination? Great. So it's it's a way to get your your application examined faster at the U.S. Patent Office. And the requirement to get that denomination is to have this accelerated search report, which is supposed to be extremely cumbersome and thorough. I've done a couple of these, and I'd rather take an invalidity any day than do this kind of search. It's very, very hard, and it's supposed to be very thorough. So it's public knowledge. You are all welcome to put in that application number, look in public pair, and then you will get both this report and what the examiner did afterwards. And it's more of a method patent, right? It's a wireless shopping. You go into a mall and you scan barcodes to help you with your shopping experience. So this is the field of search, the searcher says. There's 12, 13 classes in here. I mean, we're talking about probably hundreds of thousands of patents that are included in this entire classification here. And then the search was done on USPTO East. So this is what the examiners are using at the USPTO. But as a searcher, you can actually go in there, and they have sort of a library with some computers, and you can sit down and use the exact same database that the examiners are using. And you know, jurisdictions are given, so that's great. And then look at the hit numbers. About 22,000 references. I'm sure there's some overlap here, but a very large amount of references. And then look at the timestamp, 2 minutes. Do you think any of this was reviewed? No, I doubt it. And then the searcher goes to Delphion and basically does the same keyword searches. The jurisdiction is very similar, so it's a lot of overlap. Yes, Delphion in that time, this was in 2007, had some extra Japanese and German patents that East did not have, but they're also looking at the same US grants, applications, and so forth. And we have no idea how many numbers of hits are in here, but I guarantee you there's probably tens of thousands as well. And then they do dialogue. And I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's hard here to get a search strategy the way I've asked you, so it automatically kind of comes out like this. And so this is where I was telling you, where you start having to figure out what was actually done here. And so we see here the 708 numbers of hits. It's where all of these were combined together. But I don't think the 708 was done. I think what happened is that the searcher thought 700 references was too much to look through. So they ended up combining them again with some proximity operators and other keywords of communication. They get 13 references. And this is where you know something was reviewed, because the duplicates are removed. RDs for removed duplicates. And that's the one step people do before they start reviewing this, because you pay per reference in this database. And so they do want to remove the duplicates. So I think only 9 references were actually retrieved here and probably reviewed. So this is maybe the one where I have confidence that maybe those 9 were reviewed. I don't have confidence that the tens of thousands of references before this were. So again, it's not about including all of these iterations in your search report. There is a method to how you go through that and clean up your search strategy. So that's really important as you're working to clean up your search strategy, and that's something, a methodology that I strongly believe in. This is an example for an expandable type of those implants that are put in between vertebra, and maybe you start with this keyword string where it's expand an intervertebral implant. Let's say I'm a searcher that I don't have a lot of knowledge of this field. And after I reviewed the 559, I learned from that, right? And I learned that intervertebral can also be called somatic. And the implant can also be called cage or spacer or prosthesis. And so I broaden up that keyword, and I have more references now. But I don't need to look at all of the 733. I just look at the difference, right? The ones that I haven't reviewed before, which is only 179. But once I'm done with this, I can remove the first one in my search strategy. And I think this is where people just keep on searching. They just, oh, what's the next search string? Before you move on to the next search string, clean up your search strategy to only include what was the broadest, right? So everything that's included in the 738 includes the 559. So I can remove this one, and then that will automatically remove the combination. And then I move on to my next type iteration in my circle, right? I realize maybe that there is a specific CPC code that deals exactly with intervertebral implants. Well, I can use that to combine it with the word expand, and it gives me 1,000 references. Again, I don't look at the overlap, so I only look at what I haven't looked before. This is the efficiency part. It's not about seeing the reference. I've heard a searcher say they never do this kind of like removal of references they've already looked at, because if they miss the reference in the first search string and it pops up again, it's a sign of that reference might be important. That's not how you search. That's not how you figure out if something is important if it comes up over and over again. You review the references that you've said you reviewed. Yeah, and then maybe there is also another US classification that's right on, right? It's a spine implant in between adjacent spine bones. It's right on it. So I add that and I expand my classification and keyword combination to include another classification in here. Again, I remove everything I've seen before, both in the keyword and in the original combo, and I only have 200 references to review. And again, next step, clean up the search strategy right away. Right away before you move on, you remove the one there, and then you remove the narrower component, right? Because it's already included in that. And then you only have 2. You went from 5, or really from 7, because we already cleaned it up in the first place, to 2. And this is when you're done with it, not only are you really sure what you've done, and you can see where the gaps are, but your reviewer is going to be much more clear what you have done. And so this is the parts where we've removed everything, and we only leave the ones that are the broadest, right? So I left 2 keywords in here because a lot of times you might have, one keyword that is in the title, abstract, and claims, and then you have another approach where it's anywhere in the specification. But otherwise, there is only one classification and combination, only one similarity, only one citation. So you take the broadest one, and that's what's included in there. Remove everything else. And this is how one of my search reports looks like. And not only do it's compact, but I also explain what was done. So here it's just a classification. So it's the concise definition of the classification is in there. If I have a classification and keyword combination, I explain what was done. So even an inventor, they have no idea what these mean. They can go in and look at it and see what I have done. And there's no excuse for not having this kind of stuff in there, because there are tools that actually allow you to directly create this. And one of the favorite features in Patseer is this kind of this kind of element where not only can you export the search strategy, you can actually export the definitions of the classifications you've searched. And this is invaluable, because I used to spend a lot of time cutting and pasting from US class definitions and then going to the EPO and do the same, and it's a pain. Being able to do this directly from Patseer, it's something that is a time saver, and I love it. This is a different way of looking at the search strategy, right? It's an iterative growing spiral. Thank you, Surab and Twinkle, for helping me with graphics on this. And I'm a big believer in this type of methodology. So in conclusion, we are not just finders, we are searchers, right? I'm a big believer in this because it's important. It's important to do a good job, whether you find the references or not. And it's important if somebody comes back and asks you why you didn't find the right reference, that you are able to demonstrate that you did everything that was needed and it was a quality type of search. Again, we're competing now with machines. We're competing with a lot of people who do this kind of job. So we want to make sure that that is done correctly. Of course, it has to be reproducible. A lot of times, our clients either will come back to you, but maybe they want to do an update or they send it to a different searcher. It is our duty to make it such. Learning, again, don't take this as criticism. If somebody comes back at you and asks you questions, asks you to change and add and finesse your search, take it as a learning opportunity. Have that communication with the client. I've heard stories where people have said, I messed up. The client called me yelling. It was a mess up, but in the end, I talked to that client, and we figured out that, well, they could have mentioned that who are the biggest players in this field, and if they would have done that, I would have been able to provide a better search. And the client really appreciated that and now are one of their best clients. So there are stories like that, and we all make mistakes. We have to be able to own up to them. And one of our PIOG colleagues, Tom Wolf, had a recent article in Online Searcher. One of these case studies that I showed you, another one, it was the same thing. He did something. He got this report, and then the searcher wanted to the client wanted to know why was this reference missed. References are missed in different ways, right? Our clients can have a little AI tool, right? Our patent attorney that is sending out the search to us, and so they can find references with a different kind of AI tool than we're using. They can be in-house with already a curated set of references in their pocket, and they want to test us. A lot of times they do, or they don't. They just, as they're looking at the search report, they're like, oh yeah, I know this other reference that and so they have it. It can be through the prosecution, like Tom's article, where the client did a patentability search, nothing was found. The client decided to file for a costly patent application, paid a lot of money. Based on that report, the examiner comes back with a reference. The client is pissed. I paid all this money for it, right? Infringement, our clients, we do an infringement search. They get sued for infringement because we didn't find a reference. Litigation, all kinds of ways of references being found, right? So it's really important that we do a good job. And reputation. It's not just about your individual reputation, although of course that's very personal and that means a lot to us, right? Then we know that we are very good and then we want our clients to come back to us. But it's the reputation of an entire profession. Like Tony said, we are in this very, very sensitive time, and whether it's certification or whether it's the death of our profession, like the only thing we can do is to be honest and to have high quality products, because if I mess up, that reflects badly on all of you as well, and vice versa. So I think like as a community, we really, really need to make sure that quality is important. It's not just price. It's not just doing it fast. We want to make sure that our profession is seen as something that's important and valuable. So with that, I thank you. If you have any questions.
This example you have given for this medical device search, from narrow to broader search slowly, is it only a novelty search, or does it also include obviousness search as well?
I would say to any kind of, you mean infringement search or FTO search?
No, I'm talking about novelty search, not infringement. It's novelty search. So
yeah, I use that approach to any searches that I do. I use that approach even for analytics to some extent. I feel like finding the right references, like right on references first, like really speeds up the process, makes me learn a lot more, I know where the bar is. So I use that approach for any search.
Now, why, my question is that for obviousness, two different arts can be combined, right? Say you are searching for an inhaler device, inhaler,
Annular.
right? Right, yeah, punctuations.
Okay.
So now, with every punctuation, I did this kind of project once. With every punctuation, there is a drum that rotates, and one by one, the ejector comes in forward of the pipe, and that particular drug gets delivered. So I got a resemblance with a revolver.
Okay.
And every time you shot a bullet, the chamber rotates, and one chamber comes in front of that pipe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Correct. So, if this kind of two arts can be combined, then we can put forward an argument over obviousness, isn't it?
Absolutely, but I can guarantee you that there's probably hundreds of other references that don't involve a revolver and they're more on point. And when your client will take a look at your report and sees a revolver but doesn't see those hundreds of references that are more relevant, I don't think they're going to, I understand your argument that it could be used as an obviousness, but I think they would rather take something that's in the technology. If you don't find it in the technology, it's great, then you can go to adjacent technologies and find references for obviousness there. But if it is in the technology, that's what you should focus on.
So then you may suggest that two different patent classifications to be searched and then combine the words for an obviousness test. Is
Sure,
it
yeah,
the way?
you can do that, yeah.